No matter how many times I do this, it is just not working. Hi, I'm Joe, and welcome to Motor City Boat Werks. Let's get to work. I'm telling you, this is going to be the most challenging project yet. This is something I've never attempted before, and frankly, I don't exactly know how I'm going to be doing it or how well it's going to work. I don't exactly know all the steps. I don't exactly know what it's going to take, and I don't know whether or not I'll be able to get the finish that I like. This episode is about installing the headliner in my Albin 27 pocket trawler. The headliner material is a product called hull blanket. It's also known as hull liner. In the previous 2 episodes, I talked about what this material is and my pattern making process. Be sure to check it out. I'm installing this material along the sides of each cabin where the portholes are located. This is an imperfect surface. There's a lot of curves and angles and radiuses. Like with any project, there's going to be some issues. Let's talk about seams and leading edges. In one of the previous episodes, I was in the aft cabin and I talked about how you want to make the corners kind of blend seamlessly. It's really important. And you also want to look at these leading edges where the fabric is going to come around here. You want it to have a proper profile so it looks proper. And here's a great example of something that I think's got to be fixed. It's a tiny detail, but it'll make a big difference in the finishing. So as you look down this leading edge here, remember, this has been repaired because the portholes were rotted. As you come down the edge here, everything kind of looks like it's proper in the line until you get to this point right here. And there's a noticeable dip where it kind of comes in. This will be very, very obvious when you put the fabric on here and it comes around. When you're standing back there, it'll be obvious that this doesn't line up. What this means is that this has got to be blended a little bit better. Either material's got to be added or material's got to be taken off to try and bring this bump down a little bit so it all blends a little bit more and it's not so obvious. There's no point in mincing about. To do any type of fiberglass sculpting, we're going to need to use a special tool. I call it the Party Boy Grinder.
Okay, I gotta sculpt a little bit. Very nice. Better.
Yeah.
While I've had some success in the forward cabin, the aft cabin has turned out to be the most challenging yet. In this space, there are 9 different pieces of headliner material. They all have to be put together so that it looks good to the eye, but I have no confidence in how the seams are going to look. I've done 2 or 3 sets of patterns, and each time it's very obvious. There is no way to hide these seams. There's just too much going on. It's going to look like Frankenstein's face. The real problem is how all these seams are going to come together on the underside of the little bump. I know from my early material experiment that the only way to get a good seam is to have a straight edge. And you can't have a straight edge when you've pulled or stretched the material around a radius. So even if you can get the material to go around a corner, you still have to join the seam with the next piece of headliner, and that's where things get ugly. In this situation, what I really need is a way to hide the seam altogether, to completely get it out of sight. At some point, I'm going to be laying inside the aft cabin, and I'm going to look up under the elbow here, and I'm going to see this Frankenstein patchwork of seams that don't really come together. So there's got to be a way to reduce the number of seams. My solution is, instead of taking the whole blanket and wrapping it down and around the bump, why not wrap the material from the bottom up and then hide all the seams inside a triangular area on each side of the bump. I can cover it up with some sort of teak trim. Now, why am I talking about this? Well, this is one of those nuances of boat building. It's the little details. This is the type of thing that no one talks about on those other boat restoration channels. And it's a teaching moment that relates directly to one of my rules of amateur boat restoration. Rule number 4. You've got to prepare early for finishing. By planning ahead, I'm dramatically improving the odds that my finished project is hopefully going to look pretty good. One of the things that makes my Albin 27 a little bit different is in the aft cabin, I opened up the sleeping area to make the cabin as large as possible. From the factory, this is what the midships bulkhead looks like inside the aft cabin. This bulkhead is actually a panel. It's an overlay bulkhead. It creates a little cubby hole for your feet to go in when you're laying in the berth. This was a 1/2-inch thick piece of marine plywood. From the factory, it was covered with the vinyl material and then mounted to the fiberglass hull. The factory used this to cover up all the complex angles that were going on in the hull shape. But in my aft cabin, I wanted to open this up. The more space, the better. It gives the impression of the cabin being a larger area. There are some very complex curves and some corners that there's no way to have one piece of material cover that. And the area that has to be covered is too big to stretch the whole blanket covering the whole area. The whole blanket will only stretch 5 or 10%, and I really need to be able to go 30, 40%. My solution was to make an overlay bulkhead just like the factory, but I would make it out of an FRP panel and put the whole blanket material over the panel. This way it would be lighter and I could cut it to match the exact hull shape. In order to do this, I had to make another pattern, and this one had to follow the exact lines of the hull. I've talked about pattern making before. In this case, I took a suggestion from one of the fans of the show. Dave is one of the workers. He's a supporter of my channel, and he pointed out that extra large popsicle sticks can be hot glue gunned together to create a very fast and accurate pattern. Now, this is the first time I use this technique, and I gotta say, I think it has its place in certain applications. It allowed me to see the curves of the hull behind where the overlay bulkhead would be positioned. I think in certain situations, the popsicle stick method is a great way to make a fast pattern. Once the pattern was complete, I transferred the shape to the FRP panel and then cut it and sanded it so it was ready to receive the hull blanket material. Now, the hull blanket material was attached using spray adhesive. Using a series of cutout darts, I was able to get the corners smooth. Of course, you won't see the back of the panel. It only matters what the front looks like. In this way, there'll be no visible seams. The panel itself will cover everything up, and it should look very finished. Now, I can understand if at this point you still don't understand what exactly I'm talking about. It can be hard to conceptualize what this finished project's going to look like, but that's okay, because I'll be back next time, hopefully with a moment of completion. I'll be installing the hull blanket in the aft cabin and finishing up the forward cabin. Everything will hopefully be coming together and we'll be finishing phase 1. If you enjoyed this episode, if you got something out of it, do me a favor, hit the like button and leave a comment below. You can email me at the Motor City Boat Werks website, or the email's on the homepage of my YouTube channel. Thanks for stopping by. We'll see you next time. Stay motivated.